About a year or so ago, I began listening to some interesting music called klezmer. It's a Jewish genre that I recently got my brother into, but I began listening to it so much I am naturally assimilated and began learning more and more about the Jews, learning about their culture and their language to sing more songs. Through these songs, I learned more about Jewish history and the struggles the Jews had throughout their long history. I'd love to tell you all about Jewish history, culture, and even some of the songs I picked up. So we'll trek through the medieval Jewish experience and their attempts to escape the old world. Then we'll explore Yiddish culture and the evolutions made to adapt to their climate. And finally, we'll discuss the Jewish Enlightenment and the first Zionist movements. As we discuss the challenges these ancient people faced, let's share an AirPod, open up the best music app, Samsung Music, and let's sing along to some Yiddish. The first is one of my favorites, the ballad of how the Jews got to Europe. It helps build an understanding of the challenges the Jews face as they were forced into exile during the Roman occupation of Jerusalem. They were expelled in places like Egypt, Greece, Italy, Germany, Spain, and Eastern Europe. We now call this the Second Jewish Diaspora. The Jews would then be oppressed in the diaspora for thousands of years, being punished and often killed by evil regimes for just being Jewish. If you thought the Nazis were bad, well, you'd be correct, but the Christian powers of Europe were not friendly with the Jews either, often murdering thousands in campaigns like the Crusades, or displacing them from their homes in the diaspora like the Spanish Inquisition. Oppression was so prevalent within Jewish culture, it became part of their identity, consistent among German and Slavic regions and Jewish populations. With the discovery of the New World, many Jews were able to leave Europe and move directly to the Americas in hopes of free religion. What's worse is that people who couldn't afford it would put themselves into slavery and servitude in order to get to the American colonies. Sadly, many of these immigrants were often harassed with others as they settled down and began working. Organizations like the KKK or Henry Ford's Nazi faction influenced many to harass Jews. However, many Jews did have an overall better time in their living conditions with the US compared to Europe. This called for more Jews to begin immigrating to the New World, which will continue until the Haskalah. America is given the new name to the Jews, calling it the New Diaspora. As a result of the Haskalah and immigration to the new diaspora, Jewish culture would develop to interesting levels. This reminds me of a song. Oh, this one, we're listening to it now, called An Alingassen, or Doloi Politze, which is about many of these pressing issues that Yiddish culture was first to witness during the Crusades, as the Jews, in fear of their safety, wanted to embellish and intertwine their cultures into their occupiers. Many new variations of Yiddish culture were seen all across the European continent, with differences in all of them result in their geography. The attempted integration was only so successful as oppression continued to be the pressing issue in Jewish communities. The language the Jews knew changed drastically to their environment, opting for the Yiddish language. Similar to English in the sense that it takes many aspects from other languages, using the Hebrew alphabet, having a German dialect, and with Slavic components. During the Haskalah or the Jewish Enlightenment, Yiddish culture and history would be developed more as people were seeking to learn about their own culture and advocate for their rights. Many theories begin to intertwine themselves with Jewish culture. As socialism and anarchy grew so did the progress made in Jewish circles, many Jews siding with these beliefs as it lined up with the things that they needed. These beliefs would eventually morph into a new idea called Bundism. Bundism is a Jewish socialist movement that hopes to unite Eastern European lands under Russia into one Bund or band. This faction would be dissolved during the Russian Revolution, but made its mark on leftist Jewish belief, inspiring many Jews to rise up with the communists. These ideas would also create the International Jewish Labor Bund, which would stretch across the world, spreading the Bundist ideal. This political awakening would also accommodate in the creation of Zionism, a nationalist ethno-statist belief that there ought to be a re-establishment of the Jewish state within the land of Palestine that shall be protected and developed. Zionism would later be the breeding grounds for the Jewish ethnic identity. Getting a bit ahead of ourselves, we continue to see radical changes that have never been seen in the sphere of the world. That reminds me of a song called In Zalksnik Yam. Oh, wow, that's the next song? How convenient! All of this change began in Age of Enlightenment, officially beginning in the late Industrial Revolution during the 1880s and ending after World War II, but really began near the 1700s. This age is known as the Haskalah or the Jewish Enlightenment. This brought many discoveries and teachings from scholars like Moses Mendelssohn. The Jewish Virtual Library states that he was so extraordinary that he won titles from Frederick the Great, calling Moses a Jew under extraordinary protection. The Prussian Academy of Sciences to award Moses with titles and prizes. Moses is often referred to as the father of the Haskalah via the Jewish Virtual Library, calling for the revival of the Hebrew language, translating the Torah into German, and attempting to tame Christian-Muslim relations with Jews, along with advocating for the tolerization of Jewish people in Europe. Many of these findings and beliefs spread like wildfire across the European continent, influencing many Jews to demand more rights, along with learning more about their own culture. These findings and beliefs spread like wildfire across the European continent, influencing many Jews to demand more rights along with learning more about their own culture. This rise in education brought many discoveries in all aspects, from history, language, and even many scientists. Many scientific discoveries like Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and other incredible teachings to Robert Oppenheimer's atomic bomb. This is when the first Zionist movements began, causing many rich and middle-class Jews to begin immigrating to the weak Ottoman Empire in hopes to take control of Palestine. Many of the poorer Jews experienced more suffering in Palestine as a result of immigration and discrimination from the higher classes. Inspiring many Jewish poets to write about their experiences, these writings would contribute to many Jewish teachings during this time and would also be the foundation of many songs, like in Zalksanik Yam. Well, that's all the songs I have on my playlist, and likewise, that's where we'll be stopping for now. So whether you're listening to a song about the suffering of the medieval Jew, Yiddish culture, or even the Haskalah, always remember that music is the greatest storyteller we have.